This week on the show, Fnatic wins 4 straight, Team Enemy wins the MLG Americas Minor, and Question Mark form their own organisation. I'm Jack Westerman, joined by Jason Moses O'Toole, and you're watching PopFlash. Our first story this week is the Starseries 14 finals, which took place over the weekend of January 13th to 17th. Now, Jason, very big tournament, $200,000 up for grabs, and certainly a lot of representation from some of the world's best teams. As we look at Group A, we'll see Luminosity and Na'Vi advanced from this group, 2 wins and 2 wins respectively. G2 and CyberZen unfortunately did not. However, the first team I want to talk about are CyberZen down there at the bottom. They're the Chinese team. They flew all the way over for this event. And I think it's fair to say that while they did finish bottom, it wasn't all bad news. They did take a map off G2, which is, no mean feat for an Asian team coming to Europe for the first time. They beat them 16-6 on Inferno. And actually, their second map against G2, they only lost 14-16 on Cash. So could have been a very different game. I assume they have to be happy with that, going back to China.
Yeah, absolutely. The win on Inferno was great, and Cash is even, that's a map that G2 is very good on. They've beat Virtus.pro on it twice, including a 16-0. They're one of the stronger teams. It's like their home map, essentially. It's one of them. One of the maps that they've been really, really strong on, during this run of success they've had recently. So yeah, CyberZen definitely has to be happy with that, especially considering, we always hear, I don't know firsthand, obviously, but I always hear about the level of competition over in the Asian regions in China, like not being up to par. So I haven't gotten to watch these matches yet. From what I've talked to some of the analysts that were at the event, a lot of them talked about how good, and even G2, I believe, commented on this on Twitter, was how good the flashes and smokes and executes were from CyberZen. Just, getting blind from locations they didn't even know about. Just don't know how they were getting flashed, and they were still blind and just getting beat up. So showing a pretty crazy level of preparation, obviously. And that's a good first start for a team, at this international event that we didn't expect.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's move on in that case. So another map that was, I guess, closer than people may have expected was Na'Vi versus G2, which it was, phenomenal. They had an overtime game. I think Na'Vi won Dust 19-17 in the first overtime. They won Train 16-14. So, only, 2 rounds decided each of these games. Is it a surprise to see Na'Vi struggle so much against a team like G2?
Not really. I mean, G2 is really, really talented, and they're a team that, when they have players reaching their peak in a match, they can do things like that. And on the other side, Na'Vi is a team that, while talented, it's very much known that it's Guardian, and then who else is going to show up? And maybe didn't have his teammates playing up to the level that they needed to be more convincing in those wins. But I mean, it really doesn't matter how close it is because they still want them out. But no, I wouldn't be surprised by it at all.
Okay, well, that kind of sums up Group A. Luminosity did win, but we'll come back and talk about them once we get to the bracket. Now, Group B was the group of death, as we called it last week. Well, as everybody was calling it, basically, right? We had Envy, Fnatic, Question Mark, and the ex-Titan roster down there at the bottom. And kind of an unfortunate draw. Question Mark lost out in the end. They had to face Fnatic in a head-to-head to decide who would advance, and not many people are getting past Fnatic at the moment. Was this just an unlucky draw? Was this the expected placing going into this group, do you think?
I don't know if it was expected. I think anyone you could really see any 3 of those teams moving on in that group. We knew someone was going to get knocked out. TQM might have been, the more likely choice with the upheaval they've had, the inconsistency they've shown to be the first team, to be the team that got knocked out. But, I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, let's say you move TQM over to Group A. Look at the group of death that becomes. With the way, Na'Vi's probably the second best team in the world right now ranked, and Luminosity showing they're no slouches whatsoever, even against the best teams in the world. So, I mean, there was going to be a group of death either way. I don't think it really matters that it was Group B or Group A. Something crazy, though. I mean, I saw this stat. I think it was Envy has beaten Fnatic at the last, 3 or 4 times they've matched up against them, but Fnatic's won all the events, overall. So, that's kind of a funny stat to look at. But, yeah, I think this played out probably how most people expected, with TQM kind of still continuing their slump and a little bit of their disappointing performances.
All right, fair enough. You also mentioned Luminosity there, and that they put up a good fight against pretty much anyone they come up against these days. So let's jump over to the bracket, because they did come up against Fnatic here, as we can see. So we've got Luminosity enjoyed that bye victory in the first round, and then came on to play Fnatic in the top middle.
Lucky
there.
them.
Yeah, not a particularly good draw.
Right.
So as we mentioned, they had a pretty good tournament by all accounts. They won Group A the hard way. They didn't play CyberZen. They beat G2 and Na'Vi to advance, but couldn't beat Fnatic when they hit them here in the bracket. If they'd had a better draw, they hadn't faced Fnatic in basically their second round of the bracket, could they have gone further in this tournament, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely could have. I mean, they could have gone further if they beat Fnatic. They had a really close series with them. I mean, it's the way the draw worked. And I mean, this is the thing too. Luminosity is quickly becoming one of the most exciting teams to watch in the scene, because you look at, what are some of the best series we've had in the last 3 months of Counter-Strike? It's Luminosity Na'Vi have had some just amazing series. Now Luminosity Fnatic, going back to who was that, DreamHack, the Face It Stage 3 or the Face It Finals. Yeah. They're a sick team to watch play. They're playing good no matter who it's going up against. And Fnatic's just a tough team to overcome, especially. There's a hard team to beat, because it's almost like they get better when they have their backs against the wall in these matches. We've seen comebacks time and time again. We've seen matches where we think they're going to lose only for them to come back. So they're a really hard team to close out. But Luminosity's showed this perseverance across multiple tournaments, where they come in, they have a good showing, they improve, they come back. Maybe, I mean, it took them 3 tournaments to beat Na'Vi, and now they finally do it here. So. Luminosity is just one of those teams that is always learning and adapting when they lose. So I think next tournament we're going to come in, we're going to see them be a little bit stronger. Maybe next time they'll actually be able to take out Fnatic.
Yeah, that would definitely be very excited to see. Best of luck to those guys, of course, going forward. Let's jump down to the other half of the bracket now. So Na'Vi versus EnVyUs. As you said, EnVyUs did squander their big win over Fnatic. They got the first seed in the group, got the bye, and then dropped 2 maps to Na'Vi, their very first game. What went wrong for them in this game, Jason?
They lost on Cobble. I mean, with Train being the second map, they have to win Cobble there.
Right.
That just has to happen, especially because that's a map that's supposed to be very strong for EnVy. I think it's been a couple events now, even at the Pro League finals in December, saw them struggle a little bit on that map, and I mean, that's something they got to get back. For Na'Vi to beat them there, that kind of ended the series right from the start. I don't think anyone would have think that EnVy would beat Na'Vi on Train, but I think we're just starting to see EnVy still kind of struggling to, coming out of the honeymoon period they had when they first made this lineup. They get second in Cologne, and then they finally win DreamHack Cluj. I think they're still adapting to trying to find a recipe for success that can be consistent. And I also think Maniac's going to help him a lot with that, and he hasn't had any time with them. I mean, he even mentioned it on Twitter at this event where he was an analyst. He was just saying, yeah, I'm the coach, but we haven't had time to work together. So when they win, it's all on them. When they lose, it's all on them. His impact, his input that they want to have, that they think they need, has had no time to get introduced into the team. So I want to give them like a couple more events, see how Maniac kind of really starts to change and mold this team, because I think that could help a lot moving forward for them.
All right, well, last question before we wrap this topic up. Then, of course, so Na'Vi did beat EnVyUs in that game. The grand final was, of course, Fnatic versus Na'Vi. We can see on the far right of the graphic here. But this was like curb stomp territory. This wasn't even close, this game. This was Fnatic 16-3 and 16-7. So, Na'Vi never even got a foot in the door, for lack of a better phrase. I mean, explain this, Jason. What the hell's going on?
They just got crushed. It was
Fnatic too good right now?
I don't even know if it was that, because I mean, you saw they got beat by EnVy. They had a good series with Luminosity, so I mean they had their struggles. They have their teams who can meet them. It just was in this matchup they came in and they just hit a new level in that match against Na'Vi, and I don't think Na'Vi ever really got into the game. And this even goes back. I know, talking to Starix once again at EEPL in December, he mentioned they just don't know how to beat Fnatic. He even said it before the grand finals there. He's like, yeah, Fnatic's gonna win. It's just kind of this matchup right now. I mean, at that event it was a BO5, and every map, I mean, it went to the 5th map. It was close. Na'Vi had their games, but this time just Fnatic just swept them aside. And sometimes that's just the level they can come into when you have the players that they have on that team. If they're going to come in at that level, yeah, it can get dangerous. It can get turned into a stomper really, really quickly. And it's just unfortunate that it happened here in the grand finals.
All right, absolutely. Well, of course, that was Starseries 14, which took place over the weekend. Congratulations to Fnatic, who won. And for a bit of a change, first time we've done this on PopFlash, we're going to go over to a 1.6 throwback clip.
This week's clip is Navi versus Fnatic at the Arbalete Cup in 2010. A lot of very familiar names here on the frag counter as you see him scroll by as Edward picks up 5 USB headshots on the very first pistol round, which is going to lead Navi to a 24-6 win. Navi would go on to win this tournament with Edward picking up the award for Best Player.
Our second story this week is the MLG Americas Minor Qualifier, which took place over the weekend in Columbus, Ohio. Prize here was $30,000, but more importantly, the winning team would qualify for a spot at the Major Qualifier, which takes place at the end of February. So, Jason, let's take a look at Group A to begin with. And as the group loads up on the screen here, we'll see unusually there are only 3 teams in this group. And right up front, we should say Group A was a bit of a shambles from the get-go. I mean, complexity dropped out to begin with, roster change issues, then 2 Brazilian teams couldn't make it to the event. They had all sorts of issues getting visas, and then only 1 match was played on the day itself. It was supposed to be Winterfox versus Abey, but in the end it was a forfeit win for Winterfox because I think one of Abey's players couldn't make it to the arena or something like that. So Group A didn't play out almost at all on the first day of this event. Does anybody in America give a damn about Counter-Strike, Jason?
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't seem so, but it's just pretty standard for North America. Why not? Yeah, no, it was just all like a lot of very unfortunate circumstances. Outside of complexity, I think everything was pretty much unavoidable, in the sense that Brazilians couldn't get the visas, the Olay Alliance members, or Obey Alliance member, his flight got canceled due to weather, so it got delayed for 24 hours. So, yeah, I mean all that you can't really do anything about, can you? So it just, it's actually pretty good though that, maybe not good, but it all happened in one group. So it was just 2 forfeit wins. They moved on. It was Winterfox and Optic, 2 Pro League teams. So it's not like anyone really got necessarily a free ride. These are the teams you would have expected to win their respective matches. It obviously would have been nice to see them played out, but this is just the way it happened.
All right, well, speaking of players you haven't heard of, let's move over to Group B, because a lot of the players in this group kind of were unknown to me. You're the American expert here, Jason. So Group B, Enemy and Splice go through. Obviously, Enemy had a phenomenal tournament, but walk me through some of the other teams here. Was this the expected finish for Group B, or any upsets we should know about?
Yeah, I mean, there was an upset in Leader 1 beat Splice in the very first match of the event for those 2 teams on Dust 2, 16-14, and I mean, that was... Well, Leader 1, might not recognize the name of the team, but there are some recognizable players on there. In terms of, the big heavy hitter was Virtus, who I think in the Dust 2 match they upset him on originally, he dropped like 35 kills in it. They also have, Flashstep, Josh BM, Char, and Fox. I mean, these are guys that, have been at times in Invite or in the Pro division on the lower end, and then they've also been in Premier a bunch. So obviously, if you follow North America, you recognize them. EZG, on the other hand, was just like, this was a literal case of who are these guys? Because I think Blue did research on these guys. They've got a guy Grumpix, Morvid, Reki, Q's, and N4J, and these are guys that are competing in like the intermediate divisions. But like like Richard and me and Blue, and we were all just kind of not making fun of the players, but we were like, oh, it's Grumpix, and like we know about Grumpix with 2 X's, but not Grumpix with 1 X, like, and just like dumb stuff. Like no one had really ever heard of these guys, but I mean, this Morvid player who's on EZG, he dropped like 29 kills. I think it was against Splice. I mean, Splice made it to the grand finals, and EZG almost beat him on cash on the first day. They lost 14-16, and that's because Morvid, he's like 15 years old. He dropped 29 kills. Most of these guys have never played at this level before, and to be completely honest, for them to come into this environment, to be playing on a stage, even though there's no spectators, to just be kind of surrounded and with everything on the stake, on the line, this team played really well, in my opinion.
It's these damn millennials, man. They got no respect for established players.
Good. There's no point to.
Exactly. Okay. Well, fair enough. Let's move on from Group B. So then we had the bracket, of course. So the 4 teams that went through: Enemy, Winterfox, Optic, and Splice. And Enemy, as we alluded to, just kind of wrecked the way through this whole bracket, right? Well, the whole tournament, in fact. They didn't lose a map all tournament.
They did. No one even got double digits on them. No one got more than 9 rounds against them. It was really good.
And do you think that's just a favourable draw, or was this always going to be an easy win for these guys?
I mean, it's a favourable draw looking back on it now. I think if you look at this, looking back on it, yeah, well, I mean, looking on it, from like last week before the event had even taken place, you're thinking, okay, they'll
Mm,
meet Optic in the grand finals. Winter Fox may be an issue. I mean, this was last Pro League season was Enemy's first season as a team in a professional division. Many of their players hadn't really played in too many professional seasons overall. They'd had a couple that have been in and out of teams. I mean, Lucky's professional experience, he hasn't been on a team in like a year and a half. Koosta has never been in professional. I think it's Uber has never done it. Mainline has, and then Relics has. But like for the most part, this is a pretty unexperienced team as that five-man unit. And I mean, they just destroyed everyone. I was impressed with them throughout the season, how they were able to keep up. They were in the kind of the middle of the pack in Pro League season, and they were improving as the season went on. But this, for them to come out the way they played, it was pretty incredible, to be honest. I was very impressed with them this event.
Last but not least, I've got some quickfire questions for you, Jason. So, quick as you can, give me your thoughts on the following news stories from the week. First off the bat, a story we missed by a matter of hours last week. Titan has announced that the organization has closed its doors.
Yeah, I mean, you always hate to see that happen. Pretty heartbreaking to read that the statement about how right when Kaylee got caught cheating, they
Yeah.
were about to sign like major sponsors, which all backed out due to the bad press. But I mean, to say you've talked to a couple people about this, multiple people in the scene about it, and it doesn't all boil down to that. I mean, you got to think they closed for lack of money and everything. That Scream transfer was reportedly $150,000 or something like that, which I doubt it
Mm.
was actually that high, but I'm certain it was a very good sum of money. So I mean, you got to look at that and be like, was it really worth spending that much money on Scream if you're struggling for cash? So sad that they're gone. Those players are not going to have any kind of an issue. I already know they have organizations knocking at the door. So bummer to see those guys leave. Hope everyone involved with Titan gets back on their feet.
All right, from one organization to another, Team Question Mark have announced this week that they've created their own organization called Astralis.
Yes, the circle of life. One dies and another comes in.
Exactly.
That's cool. That's good for them. I think that's something they talked about for a while. I know I've been hearing rumors of it, ever since they were kind of disenfranchised with TSM. Um, Offers a lot of if they can make this work, I got to imagine it's going to be interesting. They have some private investment money, which is good to start out with. What I think is cool is they've actually been very open about how much money they're all making. They're all making about $9,000 a month in
Yeah.
salary. They get 100% of their prize pools, 100% of their sticker money, so that's all well and good. They're not, if they're not, it's not in a situation where they get signed by an organization, all of a sudden they have to use Logitech gear like they had to in TSM. They can use whatever they own want, and it's going to allow a lot more flexibility for individual players to work on their own project, their own brandings. So it's cool for them. Glad they're getting started with it. It was something they talked about for a while.
All right, and last topic this week, ESL have announced that they've changed a number of their rules for all their tournaments, including shortening of round time and the banning of jump throwing.
Yeah, I mean, we knew the round time changes were going to come just because, I mean, for good or for worse, with the Valve majors the way they are, Valve has control over a lot of things, where, the leagues kind of have to adapt to the rule sets that Valve wants for their majors just because those are
Yeah.
the big events throughout the year. Um, in terms of jump throwing, it's funny because I like this as a former player. I look at this and I'm like, yeah, I like that. You should not be able to have a script that does this perfectly every time. We want it to be more skill based. We want to increase skill in the game. But then also now that I'm also looking at it, thought about it for a while. It's a little bit interesting to see how that's going to affect. I mean, because that's going to reduce the amount of strategic diversity there can be. There's a lot of smokes that are widely used that can no longer be used when you don't have a jump throw script. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm really not sure how I feel about jump throwing. I'm kind of 50-50 on it, to be honest.
That's it for this week. I'm Jack Westerman, joined by Jason Moses O'Toole.
And we'll be back next Wednesday with another episode of PopFlash.